This service is a celebration of an artist, composer, lyricist, Stephen Sondheim. He was born in New York City in March of 1930, and he lived until the age of 91, as most of you know, just passing away on November 26th of 2021, this last fall. In that time, he produced 19 major works, but had lots of other works that were unfinished, but also, in a larger sense, left his indelible mark on the face of musical theater. He wrote lyrics and songs for imagined moments in his characters' lives. But for all of us who were present to those performances or listened to the songs, often we knew those moments personally, some of them. And so we recognized the human condition in his words. We recognized our human condition. The songs he wrote then were memorable in more ways than just as a tune you couldn't get out of your head, because it was certainly often that. They were songs that traveled with us. One such person who traveled life with Sondheim was Mark Sumner, our music director. And asking him about it, he told this story of how Sondheim came to be part of his life and music. I was 17 and embarking on my senior year in high school, where I was immersed in music, but not theater in any way. It was all Verdi, Brahms, and Bach, an elitist 20th century repertoire. I studied piano, bassoon, saxophone, arranged choral music, and sang bass baritone. In my small town in Oklahoma, we had the finest choir director and band director. There were many big fish in that big pond in that very small town. One evening, however, I tuned onto TV to the public television channel where they were broadcasting the filming of the cast recording of some musical called Company. The recording that's customarily done after opening weekend ends, before the reviews can kill any show. Here were these incredible singing personalities addressing subject matter you never heard spoken about in Oklahoma, let alone sung about. Who were these people? Who wrote this incredible music? Who was conjuring all these new thoughts in my head? I was gobsmacked. I didn't know immediately what to do other than to get my hands on and memorize this show and begin to imagine a life outside of small-town Oklahoma. This creator cracked open a whole other room full of treasures. Eureka! And so a journey to other music and other landscapes of creative life and possibilities opened in one life. And so we find ourselves here in a month focused on love and what we serve with love in our lives, doing a service on Stephen Sondheim. The songs were chosen by Mark, but also by others who wanted to sing one or another song that touched them or has stayed with him. And we'll share as we go a little of the journey to and with and behind each song when we can, and part of the story of their creator, Stephen Sondheim, whose world opened up worlds. Sondheim, whose music and lyrics were the background music and accompaniment to so many moments in so many lives, maybe our own life.
Anyone Can Whistle was produced in 1964. It took 33 backers' auditions to raise the money for the show, longer than the run the show had. The premise was a fanciful story about a small, economically depressed American town whose venal mayoress gets the bright idea of arranging a fake miracle to attract tourists. The tourists arrive, but they become intermixed with the inmates of the local cookie jar, a rest home for nonconformists. Farcical complications ensue. Arthur Lawrence, who was a collaborator from West Side Story, and Sondheim share a fondness for whimsy. Anyone Can Whistle was an attempt at sociopolitical satire in a freewheeling form, perhaps even the first absurdist musical. It exhibits the strengths and dangers of the genre, imagination and cleverness, which too often, instead of enriching each other, draw attention to themselves. Lawrence was also the director of the show, which should have been a red flag. It meant that one vision emerged, with no outsider to contradict or challenge the work, and so the vision for the show turned out to be myopic. Lawrence and Sondheim, you might say, had courage, but lost perspective. For those of us from the outside, maybe it is good to remember that even genius can go awry and learn from the wrong turns. For Sondheim, grounded in the lessons in his Williams theater classroom, and that notion that talent was something that was developed, the risking and the learning and the evolving was part of the challenge and the journey of the work and life that he loved.
Stephen Sondheim had a difficult relationship with his parents. They divorced when he was a child, and his mother was cruel and mentally unhealthy, once telling him that the thing she regretted most in her life was having him. It was about the time of the divorce, when Stephen was about 10 years old, that he became friends with James Hammerstein. James was the son of lyricist and playwright Oscar Hammerstein II. The elder Hammerstein would become a surrogate father to Stephen, and not surprisingly, a mentor who profoundly influenced the young boy's love of musical theater. In one well-known story, Sondheim writes a musical while in high school, and it's a huge success among his peers. Not telling Hammerstein of who the author is of the piece, Sondheim shows the older man the score, and Hammerstein says, "It is the worst thing he's ever seen." But, he says, "If you want to know why it's terrible, I will tell you." The two then spent the rest of the day going over the musical. And Sondheim would later say, "In that afternoon, I learned more about songwriting and musical theater than most people learn in a lifetime." The young artist was also shaped by his time at Williams College, where he attended, attracted by their theater program. His first teacher there was Robert Barrow. Sondheim writes of Barrow's influence, "Barrow made me realize that all my romantic views of art were nonsense. I'd always thought that an angel came down and sat on your shoulder and whispered in your ear, da-da-da-da-dum. It never occurred to me that art was something worked out. And suddenly it was the skies opening up. As soon as you find out what a leading tone is, you think, oh my God. What a diatonic scale is, oh my God. The logic of it. And of course, what that meant to me was, well, I can do that. Because you don't just know it. You think it's a talent. You think you're born with this thing. What I found out and what I believed is that everybody is talented. It's just that some people get it developed and some don't. The next song we'll hear is from Merrily We Roll Along. The musical is an adaptation of a play told about three friends that begins the play at the end of their story, or one end of their story, and works its way back through time. It starts with us seeing songwriter and film producer Frank Shepard at a party in his plush LA home after a big premiere. It begins with Frank basking in fame and sycophantic praise, but divorced, estranged or distanced from his son, whose graduation he has just missed for no apparently good reason. Accused by a good friend, Mary, who's at the party, of selling out his gift for songwriting for commercial success. And the play moves backwards to a point where we see Frank's marriage, and backwards till the play ends with him as a young college graduate, full of promise and hope and ideals. In the song, Not a Day Goes By, Sondheim plays with form. The reprise sung today is sung second in the musical, but written as the complete song. The earlier song, shortened and bitterly sung by Frank's ex-wife in the first act. This song, a second act highlight, is sung in its reprise as Frank and Beth are just married, singing to each other. Mary, Frank's colleague, sits aside alone, singing to herself. The effect of splitting up the words to the three characters adds several dimensions of storytelling not possible in a solo redux. Thusly, the song is used in three ways. First, angrily in the first act, disillusionment as the theme. Second, as a love song full of promise. And in contrast, by Mary, the lovelorn destined never to score her guy. What launched Stephen Sondheim was West Side Story, which debuted in 1957 when he was 27 years old. Most of us know it as an iconic, memorable, singable, powerful musical that's part of the canon of American musical theater, commented on so many dynamics then and now still present in American society, took on race and cultural friction, and a remake, of course, of the timeless story of love, tragic love, told first by Shakespeare in Romeo and Juliet. Who would imagine then that Sondheim didn't entirely want to do the project and didn't entirely love doing it? He auditioned for Leonard Bernstein, but Bernstein only wanted Sondheim to write the lyrics. Sondheim wanted to write music and lyrics. The fact is, and still is, Sondheim would later say, that I enjoy writing music much more than lyrics. So, Sondheim consulted with his mentor, Hammerstein, who said, as Sondheim related in 2008 when he did a video interview with the New York Times, Hammerstein said, "Look, you have a chance to work with very gifted professionals on a show that sounds interesting. And you can always write your own music eventually. My advice would be to take the job." Sondheim would do so, and he would have two regrets after accepting West Side Story. First, that it tagged and then dogged him with the label lyricist. And second, that many of the lyrics for West Side Story suffer from a self-conscious effort to be what Leonard Bernstein would deem poetic, which is to say, the voice in the lyrics wasn't fully Sondheim's. I knew throughout, Sondheim would later say, I was collaborating with someone whose idea of poetic lyric writing was the antithesis of mine. Collaborating with Arthur Lawrence, Leonard Bernstein, composer, Jerome Robbins, director, and eventually Harold Prince, producer, what Sondheim learned, his biggest takeaway from working on West Side Story was how much he needed a collaborator. I have to work with someone who can help me out of the writing holes, someone to feed me suggestions, someone I can feed in return. To be part of a collaboration is to be part of a family. And absent parents, a kid who grew up without any sense of family, every new show provides me with one. It may be temporary family, but it always gives me a solid sense of belonging to something outside of myself. Sondheim would go on to create great music, always out of this generative collaboration, though the partners in it would vary. They included people like Harold Prince and James Lapine. Both of the songs we are about to hear are love songs, but different. The first, from West Side Story, is about the love, the only true love, strong and steadfast, but which ends tragically. The second song, from Company by Bobby, again, is when he's caught up in this moment of seeing all of love's possibilities as it exists in all of his friends, girlfriends, and wives, but without any reality of it in his own life. It's a song, though, that ends in a more hopeful place. Both are not love songs, then, that center in ideals, or shiny happy endings, or simplified truths. Sondheim almost always prefers to depict life in this way, connecting in real ways to the real experience of the human condition and situation. One only has to go back to his childhood to have a clue as to why any romanticized, simplified, mythologized vision of love in particular might not feel so honest to him or healing. And music might be a chance, among other things, for honesty.